There are hundreds of injury prevention strategies out there. Some work a lot better than others. I've even heard some people claim that drinking breast milk is going to keep you healthy. Save your money, guys. In this video, I want to share some surprising ways that actually will keep you healthy that don't take a lot of planning or equipment to add into your running program. All right, let's dive right into it. Let's talk about our first strategy. Now, before I even mention this strategy, we first have to define running injuries. Running injuries are actually repetitive stress injuries. They're not the result of you getting tackled on a football field or slide tackled on a soccer field. These are injuries that are the result of you running over and over and over again, stressing your body in the same way and getting hurt because you're not recovering enough from day to day. So if we understand that running injuries are repetitive stress injuries, anything we do to reduce the repetitive nature of running is going to really help us prevent injuries. So our first tip is implement as much variety into your running as possible. Now, we are runners. We're going to have to do a lot of running, and running is a fairly two-dimensional activity. So there's not much we can do about that. We do have to run to get better at running. But all the other aspects of our training should be varied as much as possible. I like to have my runners rotate 2 to 3 different pairs of trainers throughout the week because every pair of shoes has a slightly different level of arch support, of stack height, of heel toe drop, different materials used in the sole. And because of that, you are going to subtly differentiate the stress that your feet and lower legs are experiencing with every single foot strike that you have. I also really like to see runners vary their goal race. If you're constantly training for marathons, you're constantly subjecting your body to marathon training. If we train for a middle distance event, we're going to be subjecting our body to a different type of stress. And in the long term, that's going to help us develop a bit more resilience and reduce the amount of repetitive stress that we're under. Another big one is all the running surfaces that we're running on. This is why it's valuable to train on trails or grass or dirt, because those surfaces are a lot more variable. And so you're going to have to subtly change how your foot interacts with the ground with every single foot strike that you have. So if you're a road runner, great. You don't have to become a trail runner, but let's just try to run on some varied surfaces during the week so that we can change the stress that our feet and lower legs are experiencing. Because too much of that impact with the same exact landing pattern is going to increase our risk of injuries. Next, let's talk about mobility training and strength training. Both mobility and strength work are going to improve your range of motion. You're going to be doing movements that are different than running. You're going to be experiencing different types of fitness as you gain flexibility, mobility, strength, power, general athleticism. These are things that aren't as well developed by running alone. And the better you can improve all of those elements of your athleticism, the better athlete you're going to be, the better runner you're going to be, and the less injury risk you're going to have. Tip number 2, I want to borrow a concept I learned from Brad Hudson in his incredible book, Run Faster. By the way, this is one of my favorite training books ever published. I'll put a link in the description of this video. I highly recommend it if you guys can buy this book and read it. You're going to know a lot about training and be able to be your own best coach, as Brad says. So the insight I picked up from Run Faster by Brad Hudson is that most injuries occur when you're building mileage, not when you're already running a certain volume, because you're asking your body to do more and more. And so the lesson here is we've got to reduce the amount of time we spend building mileage. Now, this is a little bit counterintuitive because this actually means we're not going to take as much time off. We are not going to take an off season where we just run dramatically less mileage than we're typically used to. That's called detraining. And instead, we're going to spend most of our time at or near our peak mileage levels. Now, if you're a marathoner who builds up to 50 or 60 miles a week, you don't have to run 50 or 60 miles a week year round, but you should stay relatively close to that. If you peak at 50, maybe you spend a lot of time at 40. If you peak at 60, maybe you spend a lot of time at 50. But if you're always taking a lot of time off, if you're always taking an off season, if you're taking a break from running, that means you're not really doing much over the summer, then necessarily you're going to have to spend a lot of time rebuilding your fitness. That is the risky time period where injuries typically occur. So let's instead be a lot more consistent with our mileage, spend a lot less time building our mileage, and instead just more time at those mileage levels. Not only is it going to reduce our injury risk, but we're going to be better athletes because of it. Our aerobic fitness is going to be higher. We're going to be more capable. And that means we're going to race faster. You are not going to like tip number 3. I don't even like tip number 3. It's cross training. I know we're runners, we want to run, we don't want to do any cross training, but cross training is very valuable for 2 important reasons. Reason number 1 is tissue tolerance. Now, I just did a great podcast episode on the Strength Running podcast with exercise physiologist Phil Batterson, who not only is a high-level runner and a physiologist, but he's also a very injury-prone runner who thinks about this himself a lot, and he is implementing this strategy in his training to become a more resilient athlete. And the idea of tissue tolerance is that your tissues need to be able to tolerate whatever stress you're putting on them. And while specificity is definitely important, we can train our tissues to be more tolerant of more stress in a lot of other ways, including cross-training. And the big benefit with cross-training is that the risk of injury is much lower compared with running. So we can get a lot of tissue tolerance benefits without a lot of the injury risks that we would normally get with running. Now, cross training is also going to provide you with more movement variety. And this is similar to tip number 1, just incorporating as much variety into your training as possible. And I do think cross training can be here as well. You're going to be working in a different range of motion. You're going to be building fitness and strength and mobility in different ways that you do with running. So for example, cycling targets different muscles in slightly different ways than running, but nevertheless is really great at helping you build muscular strength and aerobic output. So a really fantastic way to build fitness in a way that's not going to risk future injuries the same way as running, and in a way that's going to help prepare your body for more work in the future. I could not make these videos without your support. So first, let me say thank you. And this video is brought to you by our very own Performance Training Journal. I have always been in love with hard copy training journals for a few really good reasons. Number 1, when I was a new runner and I started keeping an actual training journal like this, I learned so much more about the sport and myself just by that practice. It really forces you to reflect on your training, to think more deeply about what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And if you are constantly reflecting on your training, praising yourself for what's going right, planning for the future, and then looking back on what has previously worked for you, you are going to really know yourself as a runner, and you're going to start to make wiser decisions about your training. I also created this training journal because I want you to focus on the training metrics that actually matter. The training metrics that help you improve, get better, and progress with your running. We don't have to focus on everything. We just need to focus on what matters. I also took a lot of inspiration from professional runners that I've talked to on the Strength Running podcast. They're adamant by completing a training journal and reflecting on what works for you and actually giving yourself some praise within your journal. You're essentially completing a gratitude journal. You are building up your confidence in your own abilities over time. And when you look back on that journal before a big goal race, you are going to be reading in your own words why you're capable, why you can do this. And I can think of nothing more confidence building than an act like that. So I hope you check out the new Performance Training Journal. It is now available on Amazon. It debuted as the #4 new release in the running category, and I could not be more proud of it. So thank you again for subscribing to the Strength Running YouTube channel, and I hope you enjoy the Performance Training Journal. Now, I happen to be one of those injury-prone runners, or I should clarify and say I used to be an injury-prone runner. And that's when I really left no stone unturned and tried to do my best at uncovering all the strategies that are the most helpful when it comes to staying healthy while at the same time training hard so that you can race to your potential. One thing that I've done that I think is fascinating is I asked the world's best athletes, how do you stay healthy? These are the athletes who are running the 100+ miles a week, doing those really intense long workouts and putting in the really high workloads that typically result in injuries. And I wanted to know, how do you stay healthy? What are the strategies of, high level endurance athletes in the ultra marathon and trail space, or the roads, or even triathletes? And I put all their answers into a free ebook that you can download at strengthrunning.com/elites. It features advice from runners like Dathan Ritzenhein, David Roche, Ian Sharman, Amelia Boone, and many others. So go to strengthrunning.com/elites. There's a link under this video. You can get the little black book of recovery and injury prevention. You can read about how all these athletes stay healthy. Now, I'm also curious to hear from you because these are somewhat counterintuitive or surprising strategies I included in this video. I've done other videos on the most effective strategies. I've done videos on some big mistakes or common training errors that lend people to getting hurt. But I want to hear from you. What are your surprising ways that you stay healthy?